Top of the afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a nice little treat before us today. It's not Christmas, but it's not that far after Christmas, so I guess I'm feeling pretty fortunate. This project in the box is, I think it's 2 years and 7 months. 2 years and 6 months. It's somewhere between 2 years and 6 months and 2 years and 8 months of time to get to this place right here, which is monumental feat of not only engineering acuity but perseverance. We'll take a little look inside the box. Box looks like it's seen better days, but guerrilla warfare happens in the shipping aspect of things, I guess. The latest and greatest in the production arena from Mr. Maxflow. This is a Pro Series filter kit. Okay, so if you want to take a look at the back of this thing, checking it out. Poor performance is notated by this block right here. That's basically at about 32 CFM. Little saws don't pull that much CFM actually. Can't remember how much the 462 actually, the saw itself in pristine conditions. It's probably not more than 40 CFM. I would say somewhere between 30 and 40. Just as a point of reference. Anyway, long story short, stock 400, this is your curve right here. Stock 462 with the HD2 filters right here. The mini legacy and the basically 462 and 400 version of this particular cover filtration system is a little bit different, except the elements are the same. And the elements in this are really close to the same design shape as the mini, so they basically pull the same amount of CFM, which is 130, and the max, which is the big kid version on like the 661, 440s, whatever, 880s, doesn't even matter, they're pulling about 147. So essentially at 5.5 tanks, the stock 400 is run out of headroom in the air filter. Now the M-tronic system is compensating for it, or your saw is just starting to run a little rich because it can't like pull the air through. Stock 462 comes in at about 8.5 maybe tanks, so maybe like 1 day. I've seen where I've had to clean the air filter on stock systems and Husqvarna specifically, which work way better than the stock steel systems. They're a lot bigger at a 390. Get the tree on the ground. One 6-foot fir tree with the 6-inch disgusting scaly bark inland kind of thing, and you clean the filter after you get the tree on the ground. So professional use, you're basically dealing with a saw that's not running right away. If you run one of these systems, the additional headroom from 55 or 87 up to the 130 number allows you to run a lot longer without cleaning the air cleaner. I ran the 400 one time in a torture chest situation for 7 days straight. It was starting to pull debris through. At that point, I think it probably would have made it for about 6.5 days, excuse me. I think about that extra half day was where the problem was. If you look at the Max system, it's clear over at 30.5 tanks or something like that. So some people, they'll run them for a week. I have a tendency to change mine out 2.5, 3 days, generally speaking, although with the new cage design, I've pushed that issue a little bit longer. The new cage design flows better air, but that's a whole nother can of worms. We'll look at that at some point later. As far as this system here, it allows you to run essentially about 16, 15 and a half tanks or something versus twice as long, essentially, according to the graph. I know that the stock HD2 is famous for letting particulates pass right on by. I wouldn't even consider running one of those for any length of time. It's futile in a super dusty application. Out on the West Coast, falling timber anyway, that's what I do for a living. Side note, this is not a paid promotion. I don't reap any benefit monetarily out of this process. It's trying to help a friend out, essentially. Sometimes I get to be involved in like the discussion part of the program, if you're talking about not in the design necessarily, but like altering stuff, altering parts, if you will, that maybe could be a little bit better. There are conversations that go that direction, but definitely a nice situation with the placard. Now it is kind of starting to get dark. I had a couple phone calls come in. Actually, the head cheese for this operation gave me a call. So I got sidetracked a little bit on the phone, and I'm running behind schedule. It's kind of late in the afternoon, starting to get dark. Not going to be able to finish this project off, I don't think, today. But anyway, this system requires a little bit of ingenuity on the part of the person that's buying this particular system. It basically fits over the back. I'm going to grab my other saw real quick. Fits over the back of the cover kind of nicely. That's my saw from 2017. She's seen better days. Kind of led a pretty hard life. She's a little tired now. He's done a super nice job lining up the template with the shape of the saw itself. And so it's going to be kind of critical that a guy gets both sides lined up, running right across the bottom of the shroud, essentially. And once you do that on both sides, then you can mark on the cover itself. And I'm going to look at a couple different options on how to cut this. I haven't actually read what he's using, but we have talked about it. He likes the idea of that oscillating tool that you can get at most hardware stores nowadays for cutting it. I'm thinking that right here he's telling you should probably check it on an area that it doesn't matter. That's going away anyway, just to get a feel for how it cuts and handles. I'm going to try that and a couple different other options, but we're probably going to be doing that tomorrow. I might fuss around with getting the template welded on. Oh yeah, air filter element must be oiled before installation. Yep, that's kind of mandatory. Probably the first thing a guy needs to do is take the old air cleaner off. If you're going to start cutting in there on stuff, that would be my suggestion. That's what I'm going to do. I'm taking the old air cleaner, or well, it's now the old air cleaner. Taking that off. I'm probably going to stuff some something in there, some kind of a rag, paper towel, something. And I'll probably put something over the top of it as well. Essentially, you want the curve facing the back, so we can see that where this essentially goes is like, looks to me like right there. and then you roll it around and put it on there. I guess we're going to see just how unawesome I am with this project here. This is the first time I've ever done this, actually. I kind of hacked off the back of one, I don't know, a long time ago, and was running some of the prototype stuff, and when he adjusted this cover a little bit, then it was already open, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I'm pretty anal with my plastic projects, and so don't have this quite exactly like it needs to be here. This is going to take kind of a minute. I mean, I guess it depends on how accurate you want to be. That's how much time you're going to take. We always had a saying back in the old days when I was riding motorcycles a lot: if you had a $10 head, get a $10 helmet. So if you want perfection, you're going to have to take some time to deal with that part. So far, so good. One of the things that might be better in some aspects is if a guy cuts a little bit short, just to verify. You can always recut. Can't always reassemble plastic covers. I'm going to see how close I was to making this fit right. Looks like I came up a little short. Whoops. Well, now we're gonna like take the wrinkle out of it. So I have it lined up pretty nicely over here. It's pretty good over on this other side. Yeah, that was the hot ticket. Yeah, he kind of spells all that out using the template, using an oscillating tool, maybe a rotary cutoff wheel. I'm going to try hacksaw blade. I imagine if a guy's super handy and has a nice bandsaw, he could probably hack that out on a bandsaw as well, easy enough. I can see where my color crayon didn't actually do what I wanted it to do right there. So there's a little latitude for having it not be perfect. I guess that's the bottom line, which is really good for people like me. Even though I'm pretty anal when it comes to saw building. I'm going to try some stuff tomorrow. We'll look at the rest of the parts just for kicks. You can see the new cage design. This was like a process to get to this. It was a process to get to this. On the plus side, this system now is like simplistic to get hooked up. The cage will only fit one way. You can see the reliefs on either side of the filter base, and this cage will only mate up with the filter base one way. It won't actually go the opposite way, which is cool. Now, one of the reasons this thing flows so much air is you can see how huge, but it's also the shape of the holes in the cage, but it's really tall. It's like a lot taller than the Legacy stuff. They're only about like this tall right here. So that's helpful for flowing air. We'll have to get that all taken care of tomorrow at some point. Once we get that shroud pruned down a little bit. Kind of sweet. Nuts included. Factory nut too, I might add. That's super cool. Not some cheap knockoff crap. Okay, well, we're gonna have to deal with the rest of this tomorrow. Okay, continuing from the other day, I was reviewing and got some instructional helps from the creator, if you will. He said the old filter can be left in place to reduce plastic entering the throat during the next step, which I mean, depending on the method that you use, and let's talk about that for a second before I forget. So I went out just as for kicks and giggles, bought a couple 3-inch cutters, one from Diablo, supposed to be good for plastic. That's this one here. General purpose wheel. You can see it says clean wood, nail embedded, plastic, fiber, cement, drywall. So multi-purpose. And I found this Milwaukee version as well. We're good for drywall. Can't see with the bright light. Fiber, cement, and plastic, not for wood necessarily. I have 3 different choices for the oscillating saw, which is what he recommends. I have a super aggressive clean wood Diablo choice. I have a wood Makita, kind of a wide, it's a little bit wider, but it's kind of a flat situation for going not at an angle like this one. I think since the thing is rotating like that, oscillating if you will, it's probably better for this project, although it's really aggressive. And then standard metal and wood. Metal is first, you can tell from the size. I brought my hacksaw. I'm gonna try all kinds of stuff. We have the die grinder, which this thing spins really way too fast for this process, in my humble opinion. I might try cutting with that, but I doubt it because it's just gonna wood it up, if you will. At least that's what I'm thinking is gonna happen. Now, if you trust yourself enough, you can, oh, and I almost forgot, honorable mention, I have a Kutzall burr. They do work good on plastic, I do know that. Personally speaking, I don't know if I trust myself to try to cut through this plastic while the air filter element that's perfectly good and new is underneath the cover like that. I just don't know if I could trust myself not to thrash that thing. If we take a look at an alternative from what the instructions say, a guy could of course, I guess if you leave the air filter on and you get through and get wadded up in there, you're going to be at least cutting into something that's relatively cheap as opposed to the side of the carburetor, although you'd have to gnaw on it for quite a while to do something bad. Maybe a guy can do this differently in concept. stuff it in there. I made sure the choke was on in the very beginning just because. So we can try seeing how the oscillation tool works, I guess, with the one blade just for kicks. Like the instructions say. This is my wife's special tool. I got to figure out how to operate it. So we're at the bottom of the oscillation, vibration, cadence, I guess that would be. That's my guess. Yeah, okay, so that's a cadence thing. Now, if a guy was smart, he'd probably adjust this thing a little bit if you're going to come at it from the side. Figuring out how to operate this special tool. I could move it over a little bit, looks like. I'm not sure if you're needing a screwdriver on this operation or not, but that thing worked in there nicely. What the heck? We got a little light on this thing and everything. Check that out. Yeah, okay, my wife has all the good stuff, evidently. Okay, well that one cuts nice and smooth, actually. So if you're not in a hurry, have plenty of time, seems like that one would work out really well. This one's been used. I don't know what the heck she was cutting with it. She's pretty handy, so probably not in the rocks. We'll try the second most aggressive one. Same kind of angle from Makita. Kind of wonder if you actually need that thing to be screwed down. Okay, this is pretty sweet. I'm gonna kind of go with that's a sweet operation for cutting. This situation right here, I was just noticing. You can just go down that line like nobody's business. We'll try the super aggressive one just for kicks. Okay, so this has a couple different mounting styles to it, I'm noticing here. I don't know what the other tool would be, or which other tool that would use that other part of it. Okay, so super aggressive. So it cuts pretty nice, but it seems like this one actually cut a little bit better in this situation. It's kind of interesting. Never would have thought. Hacksaw I think is going to be the least desirable. We go in a cut that was already established. Yeah, okay. Once you get it started, it works pretty nice. The problem is there's nothing that's really quote unquote straight. So you're trying to cut something that was meant to basically cut it off at a right angle, crosscut saw kind of concept. We're gonna queue up a couple of these on the die grinder. Okay, this one cuts it a little bit too awesomely. I'm not gonna lie. Well, at least for this guy bumbling along here, we're gonna try the Milwaukee. This thing's pretty aggressive. I mean, if you're in a like super hurry or something like that, but maybe that might be an option. I'm really curious how that cut saw works. Basically, you can take the cover off with that particular operation, and I kind of like that idea personally. Super nice day in the neighborhood. Nicest day we've had since last year in the fall sometime. It's supposed to be raining though. I'll take it. I think if you could get this on a machine, you could tone down the circumference spinning around, aka the rate of spin or the RPM on the machine itself. This is an old die grinder. I've had this thing for a long time, and there's no control on it. As far as RPMs, I would really appreciate one that was spinning about 1/3 to 1/4. What this one spins right here, we can see that it does a really nice job cutting. However, I won't be using those anymore, I don't think, anytime soon. We're going to try the cut saw here and see what that looks like. We look underneath there. Looks like my rag is doing a pretty good job. There's not too much going through there. We can see some of the cuts at this point. I mean, these blades just annihilate that plastic, and they burn it a little bit. So, you know, I mean, there is that aspect of it. Let's see about the plug-in situation here. You're going to have to start on the corner with this operation though. And we're spinning pretty low in the RPM range. This thing takes out the widest kerf of everything. It's not spinning as fast, but it's easier to control right on the line, I'm noticing. So I sped it up a little bit, and then notice what happens with the plastic. It's melting. So we're gonna have to get that taken care of. Note to self, stay in the low RPM range of one of these things. So that was at 6. This is an old XPR 400. I definitely prefer those to the new, what is it, 4000 or whatever in the heck it is. I don't really appreciate those. They're not really designed to be held in your hand in the same kind of fashion, I don't think, on a personal level. Compared to this particular machine, it's less powerful, if you will. This one's so much more ergonomically correct and just works better. I don't know what the heck they did with the design change. Somebody wasn't consulting the poor guys out in the field. But you can see, because we're spinning it too fast, I was spinning it too fast, we end up with a little excess right there. So we're going to tone this thing back down even to maybe like 3,000, or I'm assuming that's about 3,000. Clearly there's no need for the tang. So the cut saw works pretty good, but even at the mark for whatever 3 equals on here, it's kind of wooden up. So I was kind of curious to see how that thing did its operation. Might have to go back to the Milwaukee here now. Kind of disappointed. You never know what speed you're supposed to be using these things at till you try, I guess. So at 3,000 or above, the cut saw is kind of a disaster. I'm going to have to burn that stuff off. Back to the tried and true method that came down from the factory. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this without cutting myself up. Now the reason I was hopeful with the cut saw is because this has to get trimmed and this has to get trimmed. This stuff kind of came up in the testing process, so it got included in the placard. And basically taking care of this kind of stuff, if you do the cut saw, is going to be an option. If you're using the oscillating tool, then it's a little bit more difficult. I guess if the thing was, the cover was Shroud was still on the and I had left myself some room. If the shroud was still on the machine itself, it'd be a little bit easier maybe to do some of this with this tool. Especially this kind of monkey business in the corner. Now, this thing isn't going to cut very well. I'm going to have to pause here for a minute and take care of this cut saw, because I think that's going to be the best tool for the cleanup operation here, at least for what I was doing, especially like blending this little spot in and then maybe adjusting that. Probably going to have to put this cover on, put the element after you put the filter base on the machine itself, and then kind of eyeball where this needs to get eradicated to, actually. Okay, we're gonna go at it again, pretty low RPM. Okay, so I basically went a little bit wide over here because I remember from testing that that was an issue. You can see I have a little bit of my red line left. I can always trim it off. It's a slow process. And then I forgot to mention to watch your ears the first time, so let's do that this time. With the cut saw, I mean, if you trust yourself with the kind of a blade like this on the oscillating machine, it would be probably pretty fast. What I like about the cut saw is I can round this inside edge, so I can kind of round it around the cut, if you will. Round it around. Yeah, okay. Not an oxymoron, just a plain old moron, right? So that's kind of where I'm going to go to. I wasn't going to leave a little bit excess right here in the two corners just to see where that cover interfaces. So if we look at the machine itself, we can probably blow it off a little bit here. Okay, I think we have it all. T-handle that handles the 8mm. This kit is a breeze to install. Well, at least this part. So essentially you're taking off the, I don't know what they actually call this. I've never looked because I've never really cared, but it's probably something to help reduce the noise, because a baffle would be my guess, essentially. They have to meet noise restrictions on these saws as well as emission restrictions. These things help with that noise reduction part of the equation. So you can see we have it all exposed. You're looking at it, max flow 462, goes on the machine like that. You take your 5 by 0.8 pitch millimeter nuts and you tighten it back down, and it doesn't take long and you're rolling. So thing is pretty sweet that way, this particular kit anyway. Snug it up nicely. Now these are indexed so they can only go one way. There's a couple of tangs in here, and then this little part that sticks out of the cage that goes up. Essentially you can see where the little tangs that stick out go, so it has to stick up a little bit. Essentially get it on there and she sticks out nicely. Now, if we want to look at the stock for a second, it's freaking giant in comparison. It's a quarter taller anyway, and it's way bigger in diameter, which bigger diameter gives you exponentially more flow. It's not real linear, except it's linear like this. It's bell curve more than linear, if you want to talk about it like that. Essentially kind of like the concept of water flowing in the pipe. Well, actually it looks like we're closer over here than over there. Well, now we are, because I kind of augured that back away. So that actually looks really nice, that part right there. It's a little tight right there. I might take and do some more adjustment on that element. But again, I have it kind of rounded. You can probably even see that it's rounded a little bit. So like, guy can take and adjust a little bit here and there. And with the max flow claim to fame, we're dealing with ease of operation. I might have to take a little bit more off of those two corners. Snug it up, and we can see the fit and finish is amazing. I'm actually kind of glad that the sun came out today, because when I was doing this yesterday it was kind of gross out. And no, I didn't get that screw tightened down, but you get the drift. So even though it's a little flimsy on the back side, the cover's locking in the rear part of the shroud on both sides, which is nice. So a guy can technically probably take that little lip off that I left and just get rid of it. Yep. This, well, it's actually pretty nice right there. I'm talking like that lip right there. Maybe I'll just run it down straight. I've never stood right there and watched him do one of these, so I'm not actually positive where he cuts them off at, to be completely honest. So we got this part cut way back. This part's rubbing, as you can see from the grease load right there. But like I said, I was able to round that off nicely with the cut saw, so it's not gonna damage the element. Clean this up a little bit with a drum sander as well. We're watching our hearing again. Yeah, so that's a little bit different right there on that side. It kind of digs into the element just a little bit. You can rotate it a fuzz clockwise. Seems like it's pretty good. We're going to inspect this side and see. So it's completely covered down on this side right here. I'm thinking it's touching right here. And they did a really nice job hugging the shroud with the cover, the rain cover. Some of this stuff that we learned through the testing process, that's why that is the way that it is. I'm like thankful they were able to deal with that. So what that means is a guy can cut some more of that side out right down there. You could probably have it dip down a little bit, and then when you put the filter on there, you could get it to a place, if you wanted to, personalizing it, if you will. You could probably, like I was saying, you could probably cut that down at a little bit of an angle right there and take some more of that out. The cool thing about it is the way it's dealt with right now is it's pretty smooth. I ran this system a lot in the testing process, and we're 2 years into it right now, this 2 years later from the start of the process. I ran them a lot like that, like cut thousands and thousands and thousands of board feet with one of my 462s over a 2-year increment, off and on, as the development of the system changed a little bit, and I never did have a problem. In fact, he did kind of rotate it a little bit at one point because of some of the dialogue that came up. So you can see probably, hopefully, that it's touching all the way down to the bottom right there. Like I said, I never noticed where it had a problem causing any issues on the element itself. So again, you could probably take some more of that material out. You just want to make sure it had a rounded shape to it. And like I said, the little drum sander, or getting artistic with the cut saw. You can see we're spinning it super slow and it's still wooden up, if you will, with plastic. So not the best option for the initial cut. I'm going to go with the, well, it depends on how well you trust yourself. If you're in a hurry and you don't care how it turns out, or if you are in a hurry and you get it cut off real fast and come back at it with this and smooth it up, then maybe the cutoff wheel first, cut saw burr second. Or you could run the oscillation tool like it's suggested from the factory. Just take your time, makes a nice cut. Get a little drum sander operation for this, and you could smooth that right on up, and it would be super awesome. If we look at the instructions, which I am a hands-on kind of guy, there's a lot of discussion. Should look like this. You can see he talks about the little tangs for the lineup, talks about the fitment. Super nice write-up on the whole process, so kudos to Joseph for that. What I've said for years, actually that's not even true. For decades, I've been saying for decades that the Max Flow air cleaners are bolt-on performance. So I am working on the proof of that claim. So thanks for watching this session. Have a blessed day wherever you might be on his green earth.